A big part of what I do, and I feel is especially important right now, is to help people heal generational trauma and other big patterns through writing. And I've seen the breakthroughs that are possible, but one of the big challenges is that life happens, first of all, and second of all, resistance arises. So, how do you get going on a writing practice and keep going with that writing practice, even if you know you want to write? You just can't quite get started. So, when my friend Sara Taylor, who specializes in healing generational trauma, she shared that she had found a way to build a continuing habit and she had gotten traction and she was still going. And so, not only did I say, oh, yeah, I'm going to try that myself, but also I wanted to talk with her about that. I'm Amy Hallberg, author, editor, and writing mentor. And these are conversations with real-life creatives on how we find and embody our voices. Because if you want to be a real-life creative, it helps to know what that looks like for you. Welcome to Courageous Wordsmith. Hi, Sara.
Hi, Amy. I'm so glad to be here and see you again.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. Before we get started, so I sort of hinted at the generational trauma thing, but do you want to just kind of explain what exactly it is that you do?
Yeah, that's like the million-dollar question.
In
Yeah,
it?
I am I'm a neuroscientist turned generational and existential life coach. And so I help people who are kind of stuck in this either in looping patterns that don't make sense. They've done a ton of work already and they're like, why is this not shifting? And it's usually not shifting because there's some kind of generational or existential trauma behind it. And it's just not part of our cultural perception to even think about that. And so we do these like deep dives into inner landscapes, but also ancestral landscapes to look at, what is driving these kinds of patterns. But, a lot of people have sort of this existential malaise. It's not really depression, but it's kind of like, I'm not really interested in life right now. It's not working out the way I thought it would. So
Funny
so
you
we
should
dive in.
say that. Funny you should say that, Sarah, because we were recording this in late March 2025, and this is not what any of us bargained for or wanted. And I mentioned to you before we started recording that I kind of was sort of spinning, and you were like, yeah, isn't everybody?
Right. Right. It's just part of the times right now. It is. It really is. For me, doing the work that I do and also the writing helps me stay, grounded in a bigger perspective, but also a solid connection in myself, which I think is just absolutely essential right now.
Right. And I mean, so when you actually sent out a newsletter and I looked at it and was like, "Oh, Sarah, I am all about that." I mean, I have for a long time been like, why am I doing this work? And I'm like, because people are going to need to write. People are going to need to tell their stories, to process their stuff, to move through it. And yet I think so. I think a lot of people are both drawn to the writing, but also they don't quite know how to get going. And you had some very specific things that you are doing that are working for you.
Yeah.
So I that's what we're talking about today, and I'm super excited about that. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So the what I got started with is it's actually called a website called 750words.com.
yeah.
And it's based on the artist way, right? Morning pages. So it's apparently three
Mhm.
handwritten pages is approximately 750 words. So some guy, I don't know, 10 years ago started this website and it just basically tracks the number of words that you use and that you write every day. And it gives you little check boxes to say you've done it so many days in a row. There's monthly challenges and it gamifies it just enough to keep you kind of going when you wouldn't normally go for a habit.
Right.
And so I was like, fine, I'm going to start doing it because I'm a writer at heart. But
Mhm.
was not writing regularly. I've been in many of your circles. Um, And I just had dropped it for the last, I don't know, year or two. And I was like, I need to get back to this. So I was like, let me try. And it is just enough of, for me, I'm a to-do list person. Like I like to check
Yep.
off the boxes and scratch things out. So
Yep.
it hits that button for me. And so I'm now going on 150 days straight, and I'm like at 140,000 words because it's,
Which is
750. It
crazy.
is crazy. It is crazy. But like it was just enough to get me started. I'm like, fine, let me see. It costs $5 a month if
Mhm.
you get 30 days free. So I thought, oh, let me just see if I can do it for the 30 days free. And I was like, you know what, this is really working. And I started it when I was like super pissed. We had just moved, and like everything was a mess, and I was just like so angry at everything. And I was like, I'm gonna just write, and I'm just gonna be pissed off. And like I rage wrote for like a week, and I was like, oh, look at this. I am not pushing it down. I'm also not, you know, discharging it onto other people. But I
Mhm.
was like really able to look at, oh, what is going underneath? I was like, this is actually as good as having hired someone to help me work with this. Now, of course, I am a practitioner, right? So it's like, I don't know if that would be the case for everybody, but for practitioners, people who kind of like get how to self coach themselves or work on their own stuff, it was really effective. And so it moved me
Can
through.
I just say, Sarah, though, like one of the things you're a practitioner, I think in some ways I do a similar thing from a different angle. Part of it is raising awareness. And I
Yes,
don't think we can do that for ourselves. Like, I really feel like we need some mirrors. And this isn't, to be really clear, this is not like sit down and compose. This is not NaNoWriMo like you're writing a book. It's like I'm spewing 750 words, and there might be decent content in there, but there's no links for public. You can download it, but it's not for
right,
publication. It's not
right.
meant to go anywhere.
Right. It's like a vault. It's super protected and private, and it isn't going anywhere. And yeah, there is no goal. And I try to keep it that way because I've read parts of The Artist's Way, and I was like, oh my God, this is so, um, it felt heavy. It felt
Mm.
heavy to be like, let me go and spend an hour a day doing this and then an hour a day. And like, it just felt like, that's way too fussy.
Like
But
she has
like,
too many rules of what you have to do to make it
yes,
work, make it be
right.
sanctioned by the artist way.
Right, exactly. And I'm like, screw that. I don't like rules anyway. So, but this worked really well for me because it was just like a place to capture it, and there were no rules. And so, but what I found as I kept going is that I started noticing themes about what I was writing at when I wasn't just spewing. It's a tool.
Mhm.
I'm using it as a tool. It's a tool to spew, to work through emotions, to give them space. But also, I'm noticing themes in my writing come up. I end up writing drafts of like newsletters and articles in there when I'm not even intending to. So I can pull things that I like and put them in my own,
Right,
organizational system. And it's
right.
great. But the other thing is, I just write. I'm not worried about typos. I'm not worried about edits. Like, I often don't even look at the screen.
Yeah,
I'm just like, free flowing. And it really has served this purpose of helping me to not judge what I'm writing so much
right.
because I still get good ideas. Sure, they're
Uh-huh.
super messy. They're super messy when they come out, but that's fixable, right? And then the other thing that's happened is that I just trust myself. Like what is coming through, I'm just like increasing that self trust as a person, but also as a writer, where it's just like, oh no, no. And because it's been happening day over day over day for 150 days, I'm like, no, yeah, I'm a writer, and
Mhm.
my writing is an extension of myself, and it's good. Like that is what I have built into myself because I haven't stopped to change it along the way. I'm just letting it flow. So it's almost like I'm clearing out that like creativity, self-expression channel.
And as you say that, I'm thinking about how you've said that people are kind of getting stuck in loops. Like we maybe would have that tendency anyway, but we are really getting stuck in loops at the current moment. And I feel like sometimes when you get in that place, it feels like it's never going to end. You just want to rant, but it feels like the rant is endless. And yet 750 words is a lot of words. And so you can rant for a good long time. And eventually you run out of stuff. Your brain gets bored. And I also think there's an aspect of your linear brain needs something to do. It
Mm.
wants to control stuff. Well, you've given it a job. So its job is not to gatekeep whether the content is good or not. Its job is to pay attention to that 750 words. And did you get to the 750 words, right? So the gatekeeper part of your brain is kind of, the judgy part, right,
Mm.
is kind of like off over here looking at the numbers. And meanwhile, you get bored and you write through the ranty stuff. And on the other side of the stuff, there's some really interesting content that you would never have expected. I mean, it was in you the whole time, but you were blocking it or you didn't allow it to come through or whatever it is. Or maybe it came from another realm. I don't know, but it comes through and you're like, whoa, I am brilliant. And so you have that lived experience too. I think of, do you see that? It's really
Yeah.
exciting when that happens.
I completely agree. I think that's great. Yeah, I hadn't thought about like giving that linear part of your mind a job. I think that is so what's happening. Yeah, but you're right. You do. It's 750 words is just long enough for you to get through whatever it is that you start about, and get through to something else. And for me, I'm often just learning something else. I'm like, oh, actually, what is this really about? You get through like the three layers, the surface layers, and then you get into something else. And that's really where you can start to like, I don't know, live your life from that place. That's where you can actually start to have an effect on the world, whether it's your personal life, your professional life, or, collectively. It gives you the possibility of moving forward as opposed to like spinning in whatever you were spinning in.
And I think that, I mean, you and I have talked about this before. There is a podcast that never aired, but let us revisit just a little touch of that topic now, because
Sure.
I recorded all these podcasts and the world changed. And I'm like, yeah, those
Mm,
podcasts no longer good. But one of the things you have talked about, Sarah, that I think is so important is it's not just about ignoring the patterns. It's not just about ignoring bad things. It's not just about, because you can ignore things and just kind of like pretend they aren't there. And I would argue, and I think knowing you, I think you would argue the same, that some of the dross, the crap that is coming up now is because we had just never have dealt with things. And so it's, it's one thing to be that person that's just spinning, spinning, spinning on a topic and driving everybody crazy. But the alternative that is not, I think, to just pretend that bad things aren't happening and just la, 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 la. So in fact, there's this book. Have you read it? It's called Burnout. It's by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. So they talk about how when you go through a stressful experience, if you don't actually complete that, you like block that energy and you don't complete your flow through it, that's how you get stuck. And then it's like you're in that loop and then you're just stuck in burnout forever.
right, right. Which is technically the definition of chronic stress, where it goes up and you never fully recover, you keep on going, right? And so your body adjusts to that, your mind adjusts to that, right? And so I think you're right that that's a big piece of what's going on, is that a lot of folks, I mean, me too, I'm looping in plenty of crap, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
not above this because I wrote for 150 days and because I work with generational trauma. I have my own loops. But for me, it's not just completing something. There is a moving through it, but it's also key from my perspective to be in what I would call right relationship with it. Because you can't make this stuff go away.
Right.
But you can shift your relational reality to it. And that also makes space to move through where it was stuck before. And so I think writing and having a writing practice helps with that. But I also think that's something just essential for us to work with right now. It's like we live in a world and there's tons of violence, and it's like, well, it doesn't disappear because we don't want it to be there. And so a lot of us come from families that have violence in the background. And so
Mhm.
one way that we can deal with what's happening in our world right now is by going and changing our relationship with what we carry, because that then has a ripple effect out into the world.
Right. And one thing you talked about that I think was really interesting, you mentioned that you didn't have to be perfect. Now, you are an academic. You care about putting good quality writing out into the world, right? And you
Yes.
taught writing for, like, subject, content, matter writing, right? But there's a way to get to perfection, and it isn't by trying for perfection. I
Mm.
mean, so like what you're talking about is like how many times I think about, like, I sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm going to write this beautiful thing. And because I know exactly what I want to write, it stops me from writing and I never write. But the idea in my head is so brilliant, but I will never get there because I'm stuck on that perfection. So do you want to talk a little bit about that perfection? Because I don't hear you saying that it's not that you want to do quality.
Oh yeah. Right. No, it definitely isn't. You're so right. It's like almost that expectation is so big that you can't really approach it. Yeah. I the word I've been thinking about lately is like I'm just trying not to be so precious about it. Like
Yes.
which is so snarky. But I love the snarkiness of that term. But I have found and that the way to get to the quality has been to start with being like almost intentionally messy,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like it takes the filter off. Because yeah, especially those of us who've been in academics or who have been teaching or have had, I don't know, a career in something very analytical, like we have almost these like blinders that come on that start to filter then things out, ideas, because oh, I don't know, can I actually connect that? It's like we get into our heads about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that for me, this practice of just daily writing has blown through that. And now I see and actually believe, like I could hear you tell me what I'm saying right now and be like, whatever, Amy, like, sure, whatever. But I've had the experience of it dozens and dozens of times where if I get out of my own way, what comes out is actually, an idea worth sharing, or, something worth refining and polishing and building into something else. But if
Absolutely.
right, but if you come at it from like, oh, I need to do this because I've been trying to write a book for I don't know how many, like 4 years or something, and it's like all of a sudden I got a regular writing practice, and now I'm launching a Substack on the topics that I want
Uh-huh.
to write a book about because I'm like, well, that feels doable because still the book thinking about a book is like too big of a thing, but I can share essays. So that is where I'm like, oh, look, it's all just possible now because I've seen all these themes come up that I keep writing about. And I'm like, well, I guess these are the themes that I want to share ideas about. So I might as well keep writing about them, maybe with a little bit more intention.
And it's interesting that I think we have a timeline for our writing. And I mean,
Mm,
you've heard me talk about this before. Like, I think our writing, it has its own intelligence. It comes through us and we can't script it out. And sometimes we're like, ooh, I want it to be exactly on this timeline because that'll work so well for me. And that's not how it works. You show
mm,
up. And sometimes I've had this happen just this week. Somebody shared something that they had written and it was so beautiful. And it was like, okay, that does go in the book or collection or whatever you want to call it to make yourself be okay with being where you are. But you really can't get ahead of yourself because you might not have lived into the context. I mean, so for you, for example, you said, oh, I wanted to write a book for all this time. Yeah, but maybe the book that you want to write, you weren't actually ready because you were building the preparedness for it. And so I love that this practice also just gets you out of your way so that when you are ready
mm.
to put things into the bigger context, you have those pieces to use. You haven't been
Yeah,
wasting your time not getting ready for when it is time.
right. Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's why it worked for me to start doing this, is that I wasn't going, oh, I'm going to write a book. I'm like, no, this is important to me to write daily, and I
Mhm.
want to write. And so I'm going to just be in the practice of writing. I am going to express myself as a writer on a regular basis. And I think you're so right. Yeah, there's definitely its own time. Right? Yeah, my perspective is different now. It's not completely different, but I feel like it's more whole when I'm
Mhm.
looking at things from where I am now. And I think that there is a maturity there with the ideas having percolated for, whatever, 4, 5 years, or my whole life, whatever.
I mean, where do you start counting, right?
Right. Yeah. For 44 years. Right. Exactly.
I was thinking about how when I went to college, I was definitely going to write a book about Germany because I had just gotten back from Germany and I was going to be a writer. I was going to be an English major and I was going to be a writer. And that all fell apart. And also I was going to be a psych major and that fell apart too. And then, like, this many years down the road, I graduated from college in 1992. And where are we now? I've written the books that I wanted to write back then, but
Mm.
I didn't know the depth of experience I needed to write about that time. I needed that distance. I needed, for what I wanted to write, there was so much foundational stuff, and it wasn't the foundational stuff I expected. So,
Mm.
for example, for you, one of the things I know you've been working on is you've been advocating at your kid's school for a month, right?
Yeah.
Like that wasn't something you planned, but I'm willing to bet that there were things that came through in this seemingly unrelated milieu that very much inform your thinking on what you're writing.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I think with the writing, I think what happened with that is that I was forced into an enormous amount of visibility. Like I
Mhm.
led a town hall meeting, like in a town I've lived in for 6 months, right? And I was in all the local papers, pictures and quotes, misquoted, misunderstood. I've like probably created enemies, and for me, it was like a trial by fire into visibility
Mhm.
and and allowing people to misunderstand my perspective,
Mhm.
because they're only seeing a piece of what I'm sharing, but it was worth it
Mm.
because I don't want my son's school being taken away. So
Right.
so for me it's like, oh well, can I do a Substack? Actually, the Substack is way scarier than leading a town hall meeting and having the press there, like, you know but it's because it's way closer to my personal life experience, because it's nonfiction, creative nonfiction memoir, kind of a bit about pretty triggering, touchy topics. So but it really opened me up to being able to be like, oh no, I can do this even if it is still scary.
And I think sometimes we have this idea, this lofty idea of what it is to be writers, and that we have to be very impressive and we have to be from our best, strongest parts. And yet, those hard experiences that we wouldn't I mean, it's so interesting because I think so often people go through hard experiences and on the other side, they would never have chosen it. But oftentimes, it's like you think that you would never choose that path and you wouldn't have at the outset. But on the other side of it, it's like, whoa, I learned things I could never have learned any other way. And it forced me to step up in ways that I need to step up if I really want my writing to be out there.
Right.
And you don't want your writing to be the tragic and traumatic experience. You actually want that to be the supportive thing. So how wonderful that
Hmm.
we have these other experiences that build our capacity so that we have that when we want to put our writing into the world.
Yes, it's so good. Yeah, I often think about that as like a sidekick project, where it's like if I have something else on the side that I'm doing that, like, almost like it keeps part of my mind busy, it's like I can then put myself into this other thing that was so difficult before, but that feels like what has happened with the writing now. So it's like, oh, I can do all this school advocacy stuff, and now writing, there's just like this clear path because all of my nerves are over here with the school. So yeah, I
Your
think that's exactly.
overthinking is busy
Yeah.
overthinking over there and not
Yes.
overthinking this, and then the ideas just bubble up.
Precisely. Precisely.
So you mentioned that you have also learned to work with your resistance. And I'm curious what that means. Like if somebody was listening, I mean, I'm nodding 100% yes, yes, yes over here. But if you were describing that to somebody who is listening, who maybe feels like they have writer's block, which I don't believe in writer's block, by the way, I think it's a fiction. But if somebody was feeling resistance towards writing, what do you mean by that? Working with your resistance?
Mm, yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of ways to approach that. So I think when I pinged you with that idea, um, what I was thinking of was yes, like I wanted to start writing a book or a Substack or, a series of essays. And it was like I felt resistance to it. And so one of the ways that I'm working with resistance in this context is saying, oh, then it's not time yet, and not making it a problem. And so what I do is, and actually, there was another thing that I was doing in the last month that helped that, but it was like, okay, well, I'm not going to allow myself to do it now. So I'm just saying it's off the table. And so I actually allow this pressure to build
Oh,
in me, the need to be writing and sharing and to be focusing it in these particular topics. I let it build in me until it's stronger than the resistance. And then it's
interesting.
like it just moves forward.
So, like, basically, you're playing devil's advocate with yourself.
Totally. Totally. It's like reverse psychology yourself. Yeah. And so what was it in February? And Sarah Seidelman's been a guest on your podcast before, right? So
Uh-huh.
she had a something called Beam. It was a creativity challenge for a month. And
Hmm.
I said, well, I'm writing, and writing is how I express myself. But for this challenge, I'm going to paint every day. And
Ooh.
I'm a terrible painter. But I learned a lot, but I was like, I wasn't allowing myself to write. And that built the pressure up too. And as soon as that thing was over, as soon as that challenge was over, where I was like, I'm still writing every day, but I'm not like trying to create something in particular. And then as soon as that challenge was over, and I was like, oh, now I can put more energy into my writing. And it was just like, oh, here it goes. It was like I had built up this pressure that, maybe there's like a pebble in the bottleneck or something and it pushes it out. But it worked really well. And I'm starting to do this approach all over my life because I'm just like, all right, I'm stopping working. It's just like you were saying with the time. It's like, well, it's not the time for the book. So it's like, okay, well, let this build a little bit. Not to a place where it's unhealthy, but yeah.
You mentioned Sarah Seidelman, and she's brilliant. And
Hmm.
she did a challenge that I joined, and I was writing my book, which has since been published, Tiny Altars, and I wanted to make cards, like oracle cards to go with my book. And so I just was going to make an oracle card every day, and it was images, right? And what I found too, and I'm wondering if you found this with your art, they start to sort of ping pong off each other. So like I'd be making this card and then it would give me ideas for the writing, and then the writing would force the card to revise. And so it was this feedback loop, but instead of which, I mean, we're human, we have feedback loops, but instead of it being a negative feedback loop, it was actually using that compulsion, like you said, to move the writing forward. So I'm really curious if in some of your bad, or I suspect it's not so bad, but let's say it's bad. Your bad artwork, has it sparked some ideas that have been really good?
Mm. Hmm. Let's see. So actually, the project turned into basically using art as a meditation,
Hmm.
where and so what it allowed me to do was kind of the way I started my writing practice, to the point where I thought, oh, I'm going to do a painting practice every day. No, I'm not going to. It's, I can't do both, at least not now. But it was like what I was doing was painting my reality, like painting what my experience was, and some of that was um, related to the writing. And what I found is just it gave me kind of like how the feedback loop, but it gave me another way of accessing the ideas and the themes that I just naturally hold, which are what I write about, right? And so, in that way, I thought it was really useful because it was just kind of like it was felt like it was balancing out my overuse of my analytical mind my entire life with this nonverbal part, and I was like, it's really helpful and really complementary. In an ideal world, I would love to write every day and then make a painting about the writing, or paint and then write. But it's like, who's got time for that? I don't know. I'm like, I'm just gonna celebrate that I'm
Do
writing
not make
every
it
day.
one more thing that feels
Right.
like a heavy slog that you just have to kind of get yourself through it and whatever.
Right.
I'm the more that I'm working with people, the more I am convinced that embodiment is essential for really good writing. Like you can write
Mm-hmm.
writing that that is cut and dried, exactly what your teacher taught you in high school, that is very, very good, quote, quality writing. But if you don't have the felt experience of it that goes beyond words, if you're not bringing that into your words, it's going to be some very dry writing, and it'll be good, but it won't be really inspiring. It might even be perfect. It might be flawless. There might not be any typos, and the
Mm.
grammar might be just spot on, but you won't feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. For me, I feel it land deep in my core, like midline core, and it's like, oh yeah, there it is. Not every line. I also can't make that like the bar that every line,
Mhm.
every paragraph has to meet it, but it's like a good portion of it needs to feel that way.
Do
It's
you have
like
when it lands sometimes, do you ever have a moment where like there's a song in your head and you just start doing like a happy dance?
totally. I don't know if it's a happy dance, but definitely I have songs in my
Woohoo! Yeah.
head.
Um, I appreciate you coming on so much, and this has been a great conversation. Will you please come back? We were going to talk about Chat GPT because I had
Hmm.
thoughts and you had thoughts, but
Hmm.
will you please come back again and
Totally.
talk with me again soon?
I would love to. That sounds
Thank
like
you
a
so
good.
much for being here.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks for listening to Courageous Wordsmith. Today's episode featured Sara Taylor. You can read more about her and check out her links in the show notes. That's where you'll find my links too. Backstage at Courageous Wordsmith, our production team is the brilliant Brooke Roy and me, Amy Hallberg. You can subscribe to this podcast right on this page. Sign up for my emails and share with friends who want to write. And how about you? You have stories to tell. What if you let yourself tell them? What would that look like for you? I am Amy Hallberg, and until we meet again, travel safely.